Look, firstly, I'll just talk about in the case of the elevated lead levels that were found in the water here at PCH. I'll just remind everybody, and I'll remind Premier Cook what he said when he was in opposition, that elevated levels of lead in the water at PCH should strike fear into the heart of every West Australian. Well, it seems, Premier, that under your watch, that fear is no longer struck into people's hearts. It's incredible how he can adopt one approach when the shadow Minister for Health and an entirely different approach now that he is the Premier and ultimately has responsibility. The people of Western Australia deserve to know. The patients, their families and the staff at PCH deserve to know if there are elevated levels of lead in the water in this facility. And for him not to have come clean and told those people is a betrayal of trust. And the Premier's reputation with the people of Western Australia is getting thinner and flimsier every day.
Sort of briefing on this, and what further information do you have about the levels that were tested between that year?
So at this stage we know the information that has otherwise become publicly available in the last 24 hours. We will make endeavours to get further information. The fact of the matter is we've heard the former Health Minister say today that she was aware and didn't tell anybody. We assume that the Premier was aware and he has not told anybody. We wonder now whether the new Health Minister had any awareness and has also chosen to keep that information to herself. And the real question is, how is this government operating? When they have information like this and they deliberately withhold it from the people of Western Australia, has that now become their modus operandi? And again, I'll say, the Premier said back in 2016, this issue should strike fear into the heart of West Australians. Incredibly, now that he's Premier, that approach no longer applies. He needs to look the people of Western Australia in the eye. He needs to apologise. And with matters of public importance like this, in public infrastructure, in particular in our hospitals, he cannot withhold the facts from the people of Western Australia. He needs to come clean and tell the truth. What is this Premier's problem with secrecy and not telling the people of Western Australia the truth?
Are they hiding important information because of the dire situation, state of the health system?
Well, you have to ask the question now, what is the level of competence of this state government? Clearly, the health system has totally spiralled out of control on their watch. And we find out that this information, which goes back into last year, into last year, was not made public to the people of Western Australia. But I think it's even greater than that, and not just centred around health. It is now an issue of confidence that the people of Western Australia have in this government. Why do they keep concealing information? Why are they not straight up and truthful with the facts? Why are they concentrating on projects that are not demanded or warranted by the people of Western Australia? And why are their priorities delaying and causing significant issues in the areas of principal concern? They've lost control of the hospital system at the moment, and they won't come clean with the people of Western Australia. Frankly, it's not good enough. This is not the way to govern. It's a failure of governing.
Isn't it a bit ironic that you're critiquing lead in the hospital here when it was a Liberal government that built this hospital cheaply that led to lead leaching in the beginning?
Well, I'm not sure that it was built cheaply. I would dispute that, but nonetheless, we can go back into history forever if we want. What I will say is, when there were previous incidents of lead in the water at the time of construction and as it prepared for opening, there were no patients or no doctors operating from this facility. And yet still the health spokesperson of the day, Roger Cook, said elevated lead levels in this facility should strike fear into the hearts of West Australians, even though it wasn't operating as a hospital. Let's compare that, shall we? Let's compare that with the situation that we are now aware of. This is operating as a hospital. There are doctors, nurses, health workers and patients in this facility, and the levels of lead were above the acceptable level. That is not good enough, and this is on the Premier. Now, Amber Jade Sanderson was the Health Minister at the time, no responsibility for it, didn't tell anybody. Roger Cook, a previous Health Minister, he took no responsibility for it, didn't tell anybody. Who's running the show? Who's being honest with the people of Western Australia, and for how long are they going to continue to operate like this?
Don't these current problems though stem back to the initial construction of this building, which under a Liberal government saw lead leaching? Hasn't it led to current lead problems here?
Are we going to go back and explore who built every project in Western Australia? No, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. I've not seen any evidence to suggest that this issue and those teething issues before this facility were opened are the same concern.
It wasn't just a teething issue though, it was widespread in this hospital.
This hospital has been open now since 2018. It has seen a great number of West Australian children. It has provided incredible health care for those children and their families, and has been a very important place for the staff who work here to operate and do the work that they do on behalf of the Western Australian community for those children. They deserve to know that the place that they're operating doesn't have elevated lead levels in the water. The question here is, why did the Premier and why did the Health Minister not come clean, be fully transparent? Why the secrecy? Why not tell those staff there was a concern with lead levels in the water? Why have they failed that basic role of government?
You look at the Premier's...
said that it was only 11 out of 100, it wasn't actually a risk and it was dealt with straight away. So do you accept that, and are you not just fear-mongering them by...
There are acceptable... I don't set the acceptable levels of lead in the water. They are set by the professionals. There is a reason why there are acceptable levels of lead allowed in the water. And these readings went past those acceptable levels. So we know that's a problem, because otherwise why do we have acceptable levels? It went over those levels. So when it goes over those levels, tell the staff, let them know, tell them there are areas to avoid, tell them we've seen some problems. Some of those staff might have health concerns of their own and would like to be notified that they might need to take extra special care. That's what we're talking about here. A duty of care from this government to the people who work for them and the patients who come to this facility that they operate. Just be straight up and down. Be straight with the facts. No secrecy. Let people know what they should be entitled to know.
The government says if there was any risk or any impact, they would have informed people. Are you saying that people were at risk or people were impacted?
Well, again, I say, why do we have acceptable levels? What are those levels for? Why were they set by the health professionals and the industry professionals that have oversight for acceptable standards in this area, in our community? It went over the levels. It went over the levels. That means it was beyond what is acceptable in a facility like this. And if it goes over those levels, then what we would all expect is that the government of the day will tell the people that use this facility, please be on guard, please be aware, we have gone past the acceptable levels, you have a right to know.
But the Chief Health Officer says there was no risk posed.
So why have those levels then? What are those levels for?
There was no risk posed, so what...
So the levels are wrong, are they? Well, exactly. I mean, you know what we're talking about here, people. We have levels set in our community for a reason. The very professionals that know this stuff better than everyone say, okay, if it's at that level or below, it's okay. And if it's at that level or above, we have a problem. They're not my levels. They are the levels that were set by the experts and professionals that have oversight for these sort of things. And it had gone above the acceptable levels. That tells us all we need to know. When that trigger is reached, there is an expectation in our community that the government of the day will come clean with the people of Western Australia and say, we're above the acceptable levels, we're doing everything that we can, we think everything is okay, but you have a right to know. And that's the issue here. The people of Western Australia and the staff and patients inside this facility, they had a right to know. But the Premier, who operates in secrecy more and more and more, he didn't want to tell them. Nor did the previous health minister. And so the question for them is, why didn't they come clean with the people of Western Australia?
If the levels exceed recommended amounts again, who should be informed? Should it be a public notice? Should it be staff and doctors told? What should happen?
I think the first duty of care clearly is to everybody who operates inside this facility. To the doctors, the nurses, to the doctors, the nurses and all of the other staff, and of course to the patients and their families. They all have a duty, I'll just say that again. To all of the people that operate within this facility, the doctors, the nurses, the other staff and all of the patients and their families, they have a right to know if those levels have been exceeded. And that's the least the government and those running this hospital can do.
Is there any risk when it comes to making things like this public? Is there additional information and context that you need to be careful to include so that people aren't scared off coming to the hospital?
Well, I don't think people are scared. I don't think people are scared. I see, normal operations continuing around this facility today. This is, and don't be fooled. Don't be fooled into accepting the government's line. The line from this story is very, very simple. When these elevated levels were reached, why didn't the government inform people? Why didn't they tell them? And that is the question for them. It's no more complicated than that. If those levels are exceeded, people should know so that people can take the necessary care and precautions for themselves, as well as obviously what would be taking place inside this facility. That's not too much to ask. That is a basic and fundamental right of the people of Western Australia. This is a very rich and prosperous state. You've heard the government say it. You've heard us say it. We have a right to expect that these bare minimums will be met, and so do the patients and so do the staff at PCH.
What are your thoughts on an alleged Nazi saluter running for council in Muslim Park?
Yeah, so I was aware of this, and I think alleged is the word. I am confident that our democracy gets its opportunity to play a hand in the elections in Mosman Park and right around the other areas of WA where there are local government elections happening. As we know, you are innocent until you are proven guilty in our community, in our society. It's a value that we hold dear to us, and accordingly, until somebody is found guilty, they are entitled to nominate for election. But I have faith and confidence that the people will reach the right decision, as so typically happens here in our way of democracy.
How important is the calibre of candidates? We're seeing a lot of young candidates running this time around. Is that a good thing?
Oh, of course it is. And, all levels of government, the representatives, the elected representatives, should best represent our community and the communities that they seek to represent. And more younger people coming into the democratic process and putting their hand up to be elected members, whether it be at state, federal or at local government level, is certainly something I think everyone in the community should welcome. Fresh ideas, different perspectives, new energy, that's important to any political system.
So I was just going to say, why do you think a young person would want to get involved in local government when we've seen all these hoo-ha in recent?
No, it's an incredible sector to be involved in. I can vouch from my own personal experiences, and it is disappointing, and many of you have heard me say this. I'm always disappointed when there are isolated incidents of council dysfunction that leads to significant reporting of that dysfunction and sometimes ultimately councils being dismissed. I think we should always strive for excellence at each tier of government. But they are isolated incidents, and I know from my own experience, as do those behind me who've had lots to do with local government at various levels and in various regions of Western Australia, how dedicated most of the people who operate in local government are. And the fact that young people want to be involved and want to be a part of it shows that our community and our society, that thirst for knowledge, to contribute, to give back, is still alive, and we should always welcome that. It is a great sector. Many people have gone on from local government to state and federal levels. They've gone on to other areas. They are able to continue their full-time employment in other walks of life, and they bring that rich diversity of thought, backgrounds, professional employment into that space. Their governance, their expertise in other areas, their leadership. And that is really important, and long may that process continue to thrive in Western Australia.
The implementation of the CFMEU is under investigation. How concerned are you by that, and I guess the union sector more broadly?
Yeah, well, look, we are obviously concerned about the growing influence of the CFMEU and those MOUs and the impact that has on the construction sector here in Western Australia, and in particular as it relates to state government projects. We know that this is a government that has been flush with funds, but we also know this is a government that is now almost incapable of managing their spending. And if the influence and the increasing influence of the CFMEU is leading to an increase in the cost of government projects, then we are very concerned and are concerned on behalf of every West Australian. For example, the Fremantle Police Station we saw was slated for a cost of around $100 million for exactly the same finished article has come in at $141 million. These cost escalations, which have become part and parcel of how this Labor government operates, cannot become the acceptable norm. And my concern and our team's concern is that under this Labor government, that is the recurring theme and now the standard pattern. And so the greater influence of the CFMEU, particularly as it relates to these MOUs, is something we will be asking questions about in Parliament next week.
Just on the lead, you may have touched on it, but briefly, taking us back to 2017, the sheer prominence of story after story about that issue, how much does that weigh into what you say is the onus that should have been on the government to come clean with these latest developments, given that it was so in their face for such a long time?
Yeah. Well, one of the things in leadership, you can't have it both ways. I mean, you know, you've all heard Roger Cook's messaging when he was the opposition health spokesperson. He called 1,000 hours of ramping a crisis and then refuses to accept any responsibility for the 7,000 hours of ambulance ramping that we have today. Well, you can't have it both ways, Premier. You can't criticise when you are in opposition and then when you are in government, when you are the Premier, take no responsibility. And so I'll remind you again, he was very outspoken on the issues that were part of the opening for PCH. And his words were very, very clear. Lead in the water at PCH should strike fear into the hearts of every West Australian. Well, if it should strike fear into the hearts of every West Australian back in 2016, it should strike fear into their hearts in 2025. And the Premier has a responsibility to come clean on that.
Is the Premier starting to look like a bit of a hypocrite?
Well, as I say, you can't have it both ways in leadership. The Premier refuses to take responsibility. He refuses to display any humility. He now refuses to display or act with any transparency. He's got a series of failed health ministers. One of his failed health ministers is on the way to becoming a failed energy minister, and it is very clear this government cannot control the reckless spending of the Treasurer. This government is losing the confidence of Western Australians, and they are losing faith with West Australians. And that's an issue for them to decide if they continue down this path or if they listen to some of the criticism, accept some of their failings and go about operating during this term of government in a significantly different way to the 6 months that we've seen them started in. They are failing the people of Western Australia in so many areas, yet they refuse to take any responsibility.